living in dangerous, perilous times for the last year, more than a year actually. We're living in a crooked and perverse generation that has no fear of justice at all, nor crimes and punishment. I have taught political science and Western civilization for nearly 50 years, probably 50 years, I imagine. And I've seen a lot of things rise and fall. I've never totally stood on the Republican side or the Democratic side. There are good men and women on both sides of that fence. But there are criminals on both sides of that fence too. Proverbs, the 6th chapter, verse 16 says, "There are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7 which are an abomination, or what we might call blasphemy to him. Haughty eyes and a lying tongue." This last week we've seen this televised all over the world. "And hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to do evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers." One who spreads strife among brothers. I remember, in other words, that's perjury. And for the last 5 years of Trump running for office and then being elected, he was attacked constantly with all of these things right there. Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. Now, he said he was going to give our country back to us. And I believe he surely tried to the people. In America, we have a real problem with lifetime criminals in Washington, D.C. Like I said, I've never been a Republican or a Democrat dyed in the wool on either side. I have seen regimes rise and fall all over the world. But this machine that we have here has only grown in power continually. In Psalm 2, it says, "Why are the nations in an uproar?" Now, I used to read this when I was in court. I'd sit out there inside the courtroom and I would read these verses because I was fighting this then. I was very naive to think that there was justice in courthouses. I didn't think a lie would be ever uttered in a sacred courtroom. But it was very prevalent and very powerful. I denounced the judge and the lawyers both, trying to rescue and protect my daughter. It was my job to do that. I was her father. And I would try to make her safe, if at all possible, even at the peril of my own life and of my own finances. "Why are the nations in an uproar and the peoples devising in vain?" I read this many times. "The kings of the earth take their stand, and rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against the Anointed One, the one that's chosen. Let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs, and the Lord scoffs at them. Then he will speak to them in his anger and terrify them in his fury. But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will surely tell the decree of the Lord. He said to me, Thou art my son," and this is a messianic psalm, this is a messianic prophecy. "Today I have begotten thee. Ask of me, and I will surely give to the nations as your inheritance, and the very ends of the earth as your possession. You shall break them down with a rod of iron, and you shall shatter them like earthenware, like clay pots. Now therefore, O kings, show discernment. Take a warning, O judges of the earth. Worship the Lord with reverence. The word worship there means fear Him. Fear Him. And rejoice with trembling. Do homage to the Son, lest He become angry, and you perish in the way. For His wrath, my son, be kindled. How blessed are those who take refuge in Him. Psalm number 3. This is all on this subject. I would read Psalm 1, 2, 3. Lord, how my adversaries have increased. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I want you to put President Donald John Trump's name right there. He tried. He tried for you. They questioned an election. They've stopped many news medias. They completely edited him all through his election on Twitter. All the time. Whatever he say is false. It's false. It's questioned. It's debatable. All the other side, they just, wow, yay, great. The news media, did you ever hear any of the big news media, the big five, ever for him in the last 6 years at all? He was our country. He was protecting us, and they were attacking him. Now, let's go back about 50 or so years. I was in high school when they assassinated John Kennedy. I'm talking about the same group that did this, the deep state and the military complex. They assassinated your president, John Kennedy. And then they set out the Warren Report, which was a whitewash. One man in this nation stood up strong, and that was Jim Garrison out of Louisiana. And he fought. And he exposed the charade and the coup that had taken place in this country. What was so bad about Kennedy? Well, Kennedy's families were what we might call outlaws, so to speak. They ran rum. They were involved with the mafia during the Prohibition and all of that. They were in some pretty big deals. Joseph Kennedy contacted the mafia and helped his son, John Kennedy, be elected. What was going on at that time is that Castro was taking over Cuba, and they wanted Cuba back for their business, their casinos and things down in Cuba. They were making a lot of money. They had millions of dollars, billions of dollars invested in Cuba. And they wanted Cuba back. Well, President Eisenhower was involved in this. And they were all dealing with the mafia. All dealing with the mafia. This is America now. They were all dealing with the mafia. J. Edgar Hoover wouldn't even recognize the mafia existed because he was dealing with the mafia. Well, after Kennedy got elected, he did a terrible thing. He started being real honest with himself. Now, he was always a womanizer. We know that they killed Marilyn Monroe, the Kennedy family. That happened. She was a security arrest, according to them, and maybe she was. But he appointed his brother, Attorney General Bobby Kennedy. They both were morally unsound people, but I'm going to tell you something. They were on your side. They were on your side, the side of America. Robert Kennedy went after the mafia. Robert Kennedy went after Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa was greatly involved with the mafia. If you watch the movie The Irishman or read the book The Irishman about Francis Sheeran's life, you'll find out how they got involved. Biden went to Francis Sheeran's office and asked him to block, or to, first of all, to back him, and then, after he spoke to the Brotherhood of the Teamsters, they came back to him, his lawyer came back to him and told him to block and to do a union line in front of the newspaper that was going to deliver an expose of Mr. Biden. And he wouldn't have time to counteract it before the election. Well, Francis Sheeran had the Teamsters stop that picket line, to put up the picket line. The editor of the newspaper called back later on and said, "Why are you crossing from one union to the other and supporting this other picket line against my newspaper?" He said, "We're just going to be part of the Brotherhood of the Unions. Usually you don't get along," he said. "Well, we're going to support them. We're going to honor that picket line." And I said, "I want to ask you one other thing besides while we're on the phone. Did you blow up the spur off the railroad with our supplies in it in the railroad cars?" He said, "No, I didn't know anything about it." He said, "Well, it was done." Now, doing all this other stuff now, that was about 49 years ago, 48 years ago. We got back to Kennedy and to Jim Garrison. Now, the Vice President of the United States at that time was LBJ. This is not all common knowledge, but it's truth. J. Edgar Hoover was going to do an expose of John Kennedy if he didn't let LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, run as his vice president. LBJ was involved with the mafia greatly. He ran. And then Kennedy wanted to keep the silver standard. He wanted to clip the wings of the CIA and the FBI and demote J. Edgar, because they were involved in foreign countries doing coups and takeovers. The Bush family was involved in it already. The Bush family had been involved for 100 years already. Johnson and his hitman, Bush in the background, Ford in the background, everybody that became president after the assassination of John Kennedy became president for a while. They were all part of the deep state and a military complex. John Kennedy was going to get us out of Vietnam. Vietnam was very lucrative for big business, the big manufacturers of munitions. He was going to clip the wings of the CIA and the FBI. That's the deep state. And the DOJ. That's the deep state. They planned the night before the assassination what they were going to do. Everybody that Jim Garrison named in his arguments in court were all involved in this. David Ferry, Clay, whatever his last name would be. All of these people were involved in it. Francis Sheeran went there and watched them do these things. All the people involved. And then the time came when he went into Texas, in Dallas, and the time of the hit took place. And it took place. LBJ's hitman was on the 6th floor of the book depository which one of his friends owned. There was another hitman from another direction, and in another direction. There were 3 directions. They were going to triangulate him so they would get him. And they did. And then they appointed the Warren Commission to cover it up. George Bush Sr. didn't know where he was when President Kennedy was assassinated. The only one in America. We've lived through some perilous times. Current events, post-America life. Post-America life. Well, it's been coming up to this little by little. President Donald John Trump threatened the CIA, the FBI's existence, the DOJ, the deep state, the military complex. He wanted to drain the swamp. The swamp did not want to be drained. These people are immune to prosecution. The Bidens seem to be immune to prosecution. All their underhanded dealings from Joe from the very beginning, as he got into the welfare program in the District of Columbia. You know, there's the top feeders and the bottom feeders in society. We might call them the top feeders and the poor bottom feeders down there. Living in a crooked and perverse generation. No fear from justice or prosecution. Of course, the Kennedy family were not prosecuted for killing Marilyn Monroe. That was covered up by the FBI and by Robert Kennedy as Attorney General. LBJ was never prosecuted for murder. Even his hitman went to jail for a few days and got back out. On many times they say that he might have killed 9 people. And this is sacred ground now, but let's go to all the way to the communicator. What caused us to be in this condition today? Huh? What caused it? What caused us to be in a position where the FBI, the CIA, the deep state, the military complex, and all that have so much power? Ronald Reagan, in his terms as president, and he did some good things, but he got involved with the Middle East, trusting those nations, Islamic nations. He armed them. The Bushes working with him, George Sr., traded drugs for guns. Down even the Bushes were involved in the Bay of Pigs. All of this. The Bush family was involved with the Middle East, oil. Ronald Reagan made a mistake of getting George Bush as his running mate and vice president. In his second term, they just went wild with their power. Drugs for guns and overthrows of all in Central and Mesoamerica countries. This is facts. This happened. This is the Contra Costa affair, you know, all of this. We don't hear much about it. Reaganomics. He did some good things, but he also empowered the CIA and the FBI and the deep state and the military complex to get so powerful as they are today. During the Clinton administration, same thing. Power, power, power. Deep state. They aren't prosecuted for what they did. Hillary Clinton is not prosecuted for trying to hire the Russian misinformation, which he was working with them, and the Bidens with China, and her with China, and her making millions of dollars. Obama, same thing. Deceit and thrashing America. Now, they were raised up to hate America anyway. You know, I mean, during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, all the school system has been, America is bad. Our presidents, George Washington and Lincoln and all of these people were real bad. Thomas Jefferson, these were all slave owners, so they were real bad. Take down all of the heroes of the South and throw their statues in the rivers and destroy them, crumble them up. America was bad. People were taught in school to hate America. America is the enemy of the world, the hyper conservative element. None of these people have ever been prosecuted. They have no fear. Who's going to prosecute them? They'll just say it's a conspiracy theory. Well, here comes Donald Trump, a billionaire. A man that had some very ruthless business practices, of course, yes. An immigrant, basically, an immigrant family from Germany. Going back to the Bush era, too, again. President Bush and George Bush Sr. were involved with Hitler. They were involved in moving after Hitler was losing, they were involved in moving the great, what we call manufacturing geniuses and monopolies in Germany into different places in America and in South America. There are Nazi colonies in South America. This is a pretty radical message, I know, but it's the truth. Google it. That's all I got to say. Google it. Read The Irishman if you want to know how they killed Jimmy Hoffa and how they killed John Kennedy and who Russell Buffalo ahead of one of the greatest of the Godfathers. They said, get Jimmy Hoffa out of the way. Jimmy Hoffa got honest when he went to prison. He's going to expose the mafia. But they were the ones that backed him. One of the greatest heroes in American history, Audie Murphy, was involved. Audie Murphy went to President Nixon and got a pardon for Jimmy Hoffa. What happened to Jimmy Hoffa also happened to Audie Murphy, except they did find his body. Jimmy Hoffa's body was cremated in a funeral home, and whatever happened to ashes, I do not know. All the people who were involved are named. Francis Sharan said he shot him in the back of the head twice. And he did it as an act of mercy because somebody else would have killed him. They told him, you either kill him or we'll kill you and him both. That was his best friend. We've had a nation of crime, yes. Superpowers. We've had two coups in American history in my lifetime, John Kennedy and Donald Trump. What is it like to live in a post-America America? When our votes counted, when you could go and vote and you had faith that it was going to work. During the last 5 years, the right wing of America, the conservatives of America, by the 5 big media Mongols, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, etc., they ignored the voices of American people, the right. We were just radicals and conspiracy theories and everything. What I'm talking about here is conspiracy fact. You want to read about the Bush crime family? Roger Stone did a real good expose on that. He also told how George Jr. stole the election in Florida. He was on the recount. We live in all of this mess today. The national media ignored the voices of us. In history, my students didn't know whether I was a Republican or a Democrat. They just absolutely didn't know because I just told the truth about all of it. Those hyper-Bush people, they thought I was a terrible criminal because I spoke against him. I voted for my cousins, Ron Paul, and Rand Paul a lot of my life, and Ross Perot. They're radicals, all right, but they tell the truth. And I'm telling you the truth today. How far it gets, I do not know. The mass media ignored, and they excited hate against you and me. I spoke against Bush when he was running for president. I did. Because he was wrong. He was not your friend. We had freedom of speech. How long we had freedom of speech, we do not even know. Trump was absolutely banned from Twitter. All during his election and all during his career as President of the United States, Twitter edited him. He'd say something and they'd say it was a lie. He'd say something and they'd say it was a lie. Debated. Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, all of these great Mongols, Bill Gates, all the great powers in the world. These are the powers that are ruling the world, people. Criminals like the Bushes and the Clintons and even the Obamas and Johnson were never prosecuted for what they did. Ronald Reagan did his best, but he sure had some bad bedfellows. He did some good things, but he would have done a lot better had he not had Bush families in his backyard. Let's read this little verses, a few verses again. Oh, how my adversaries have increased. Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no deliverance for him in God. Pray for your president while he's still your president. Pray that he's safe afterwards. But thou, O Lord, art a shield about me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head. I was crying to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. I woke, for the Lord sustains me. Waking up in the morning is a real asset sometimes. Many have not. I will not be afraid of 10,000 of my people who have set themselves against me round about. Arise, O Lord, and save me, O my God. For you have smitten all my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Thy blessing be upon your people. Laura Ingraham was interviewing Rudy Giuliani, which is a great man. We had the same doctor for cancer. Our cancer doctor is the same man, Mansour Karamuz, and basically in Burbank. He was telling Laura Ingraham all the things that he was going to do and how they had all this evidence. against Biden, against the whole bunch, what Nancy Pelosi had done, all of this deep state. And Laura Ingraham kept trying to kind of interject things. She finally told Rudy, do you think that you're powerful enough to defeat the deep state? They're awfully big and awful powerful. He said, I have the evidence. It's right here. We have it. I hope somebody hears it someday. So far, every court controlled by the deep state has denied the opportunity to hear the truth. I remember when I was in court for my little daughter, and she had been molested and raped and tortured and beaten and starved. And I remember when the people that she told this had happened to her would speak, Gerald Oldfield would say, hearsay, hearsay, hearsay. Bad man. Bad man. Gerald Oldfield, Esquire, and Terry Dennis, Esquire. They protected the molesters and the perpetrators and allowed the victim to go on without justice. I fear they've never met justice in over almost 30 years now. I pray we get justice. I pray that Donald Trump sees justice. I pray that America can live again. Two of the First Amendments to the Constitution, number one was freedom of speech. He has no freedom of speech. He has no way to even defend himself. My little girl, Dakota, she would speak and they would squelch it all. Squelch, 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 squelch. She even wrote a letter to the State Bar Association denouncing these people, what they had done to her, and how her life had been nearly destroyed. And they said, it's too late, too late, too late. Too late, too late, too late. I hope we can do something with this before it's too late. The great information status. When you can't stand up and have freedom of speech, you've lost your freedoms. You can't protest. When your votes don't count, you don't have no power. Number two, what's the Second Amendment?
To hold arms.
The right to bear arms. Well, Biden and Kamala Harris absolutely are demanding that they're going to dismantle the NRA. And they're going to take all of your guns away from you. To make America safe. For who? Make America safe for the criminal element? You can't even protect yourself against the thugs that are rampaging through the cities all over America for the whole last year? Antifa, which actually did the damage into the Capitol building, one of them said that he had been paid to do it. And he was a member of Antifa. Trump kept telling them, peaceful, peaceful. Every time they'd have a meeting, a great group of people together, he said, this is a peaceful assembly. A peaceful assembly. We need to pray for ourselves, our protection. If they defund the police, and only the criminals have guns, you're going to be a victim. But this group of people want to arm all of the illegal aliens and the undesirables with a vote and take your vote away from you. Living in post-America life and the post-America blues. We have one person, one being that can help us. And that is God Almighty. And I pray that He looks down on this mess with a mighty hand. People, some of Trump's supporters that went into the Capitol, went in there not to destroy it, but they went in there and got down on their knees and prayed. If they wouldn't hear them, maybe God would there from that place. Maybe they could sanctify this ground of lies and disinformation. There you have the rest of the story. Oh, it's full of conspiracy theories. Well, those are not conspiracy theories, those are conspiracy facts. But that's what they call us, conspiracy theorists and radicals and nuts and Nazis. I'm an American Indian. I'm one of the minorities. And yet my people were used. They were told they would give gift certificates if they'd go and prove that they had voted for Biden. Fools. Fools from one end of America to the other, and that wasn't enough. They could pad the ballot box just like Bush did in Florida. Yeah. We got bad people on both sides. Look who's walking arm in arm. The Bushes, Obamas, and the Clintons. Strange bedfellows, but are in the same great, big, deep, dark circle. Our Father, we send this message out to arm your people worldwide and nationwide with this information. Father, I may be censored for this or whatever, I don't know, but I spoke the truth. It is a message of healing, I hope, but also a message of remedy. We need to let our voices be heard, and we need to pray. Father, we don't know how far in the end times and how much of this that you're just looking over with your permissive will. But we're in the midst of all this down here. We're praying for your help. And Father, please forgive me where I failed you. In Jesus' name.